In this video, you will learn to solve division equations. So to solve a division equation, what we must do is we want to isolate the variable by performing the inverse operation. So for example 1, we have x divided by 10 equals 4. So a lot of these you can maybe do in your head, but the process, if you cannot do it in your head, is you want to get x by itself, you want to isolate it, by doing the inverse operation of division. So instead of dividing by 10, you want to do the inverse, which is multiply by 10. So you multiply both sides of the equation by 10. And don't forget to multiply both sides by 10 because you want to keep the equation balanced. What you do to one side of the equation, you must also do to the other side of the equation. So when you multiply the left side by 10, or 10 over 1, the 10 on the top divides with the 10 on the bottom, and that gives you just an x over here. And then on the right, 4 times 10 would be 40. So our solution is x equals 40. And we can double check our answer by plugging the 40 back in for x into our original equation. So instead of x over 10 equals 4, we have 40 over 10 equals 4. And that is a true statement, which means our answer was correct. Example 2, we have m divided by 12 equals 7. So here we don't write it as a fraction, we just left it like this. But you could write it as a fraction if you wanted. But either way, the steps are the same, where to get rid of this divide by 12, to isolate m to get it by itself, we do the inverse of dividing by 12, which is multiply by 12. So we do that to both sides of the equation to keep the equation balanced, and then dividing by 12 and multiplying by 12 has the effect of canceling out. So you're left with m on the left side, and then 7 times 12 is 84 on the right. So our solution is m equals 84. And we can check our answer by plugging 84 back in for m, back into the original equation, where now we have 84 divided by 12 equals 7. And that is a true statement, which means we have the correct answer for m. Example 3, we have y divided by a negative number. We have it divided by negative 3. That's equal to 6. The steps are still the same, where we want to get y by itself. And to do that, we get rid of this negative 3 being divided. And we do that by doing the inverse of dividing, which is multiply. So we multiply both sides by negative 3, as you see here and here. On the left side, multiplying by negative 3, or negative 3 over 1, the negative 3's will cancel. You're left with y on the left side. And then 6 times negative 3 is negative 18 on the right. So our solution is y equals negative 18. We can check our answer by plugging back into the original equation. So instead of y divided by negative 3 equals 6, we now have negative 18 divided by negative 3 equals 6. And that is a true statement. The two negatives divided by each other makes a positive number. 18 divided by 3 is positive 6. So that means, because that works out, we have the correct answer, where y is indeed equal to negative 18. Example 4, we have h divided by negative 9 equals negative 5. So again, to solve this, we want to get the variable by itself, and to do that, we do the inverse of dividing by negative 9, which is multiplying by negative 9. So when you multiply by negative 9 on both sides, on the left, negative 9's will cancel. You're left with h on the left side. And then negative 5 times negative 9 on the right. Negative times negative is positive. So we have positive 5 times 9 is 45. So our solution is 45. And we can check our answer by plugging 45 back in for h into the original equation, where now we have 45 divided by negative 9 equals negative 5. That is a true statement, which means that we do have the correct answer. H is indeed equal to 45. Example 5, we now have a decimal thrown in here. So now we have y divided by 0.3 equals 2.5. So the steps are the same, where to get rid of the division, we do the inverse of dividing, which is multiply. So we multiply both sides by the 0.3, and when we do that on the left side, the 0.3s will cancel on the top and bottom. Now you have y remaining on the left side. And then on the right side, we have 2.5 times 3, or times 0.3. So when you multiply like normal. 3 times 25 is 75. And because we have 2 digits after the decimal points, our decimal point moves over 2 places to get 0.75. So our solution is y equals 0.75. And then we can double check our answer by plugging in the 0.75 in place of y back into the original equation, where now we have 0.75 divided by 0.3 equals 2.5. And we can work through that. We cannot divide by a decimal, so we have to multiply the top and the bottom by a 10, which moves the point over 1 place. So we have 7.5 divided by 3. And when you divide that, if you go through the steps, 75 divided by 3 is 25. The decimal point is going to go right here in between. So the answer would indeed be 2.5. So that means our answer was correct, where y is equal to 0.75. One more example where now we have a fraction we're dividing by. So for example 6, we have x divided by 5/6 equals 3. Now, same steps, where to get rid of the division, we do the inverse operation, which is multiplication. So you get rid of the 5/6 by multiplying both sides by 5/6. And the division and multiplication has the effect of canceling out. That's why we chose to multiply. So we're left with x on the left side, and then on the right side, we have 3 times 5/6. So 3 times 5/6, we have 3/1, same thing. 3 and 6 can be divided both by 3 to get 1 and 2. So now we have 1 times 5 is 5 on the top, 1 times 2 is 2 in the bottom. So we have 5/2, which you can divide. You have 2 and a remainder of 1, so 2 and 1/2. So our solution is 5/2, or 2.5, same thing. And we can check our answer by plugging back in for x. Now, because when you plug in for x back in the equation, we would have to divide by a fraction, I'd recommend when you're plugging in that you actually plug in this improper fraction. So we can write that as 5/2 divided by 5/6 equals 3. And dividing is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, which would be multiplying by 6/5. 5 on the top divides with 5 on the bottom. 6 on the top and 2 on the bottom, you can divide both by 2 to get 3 and 1. So you're left with 3/1, which would equal 3. So that does work out, which means our correct answer is 5/2, or 2.5, same thing. And that concludes our lesson for today. We will see you next time.